maybe listen to him speak. No matter who, just let it go.
Pop, persuadable. What's going on, boo-boos? You know, before we get into this video, back in, what was it, 2019, and between December and January, there was a moment where I needed to get across the country, and these were some of the individuals that really helped me out and helped do that. So I want you to remember that if I can remember the people who supported me over a year ago, I'm going to remember you as you continue supporting me. All of you individuals, as I continue growing and continue expanding, you all matter. This was custom made, custom drawn by my graphics department. And I want these individuals to know that your ability to help me a long time ago really inspired me. And don't think for a second that I forgot who you are, because I remember. And when you all say those nice things to me on YouTube and you take time out of your special day to write something special and make my day special, I don't take that for granted. I can absolutely assure you. All right. Now, that was serious mode. Let's get into wiggling the chicken nugget naked while trying to, I don't know where I'm going with this. So let's talk about the magician. No one's talking about the magician. No one's talking about the magician. Magician buff may be huge, or maybe not. Who knows? So how about we talk about what this buff was? Essentially, two very important things happen. All right, and we're gonna speak about which one's more important than the other, in my humble opinion. All right. The first thing that happened is that magician got a speed bonus. So whenever you use that magician wand, you now have a 40% increase to movement speed, which is a 10% increase from the previous 30% movement speed increase. That's very, very big. The second thing that happened was the rescue potential with magician. We all know that magician is a bitch to save, right? Let's just get it out there. It's a bitch to save a damn magician. It takes forever. It's actually 60% longer whatever, to rescue a magician than what it is to rescue pretty much all other characters, minus a few. So with that being said, we all know that it's a lot harder, a lot more difficult to rescue a magician. All right, you're more likely to be terror shocked trying to rescue a magician because it takes longer to try to rescue him. All right, well, what the devs decided to do is make it so if you do pull off the rescue, that magician is going to stay on the chair, or rather the magician leaves an illusion on the chair, and then the magician stays invisible for 2 seconds. Okay, pretty big deal. And the reason being so is that one of the biggest issues using magician was the fact that if you died early, or rather if you went down early, it would really be difficult for the rest of the team. Remember, that 60% increased time to rescue a magician is detrimental. All right, we already know that rescues are difficult as it is, and now you're going to say it's going to take you 60% longer. That means that you're more likely to get terror shocked, which has its own implications in itself. Okay, but the good thing about this buff is that now magician will have at least somewhat of an escape option when he gets rescued off the chair. But I actually don't think that's the biggest buff. Because when I do speak to people about magician, everyone's talking about how, well, when they do talk about this buff, because, you know, this is a big update, a lot of stuff happened, and I covered that in a lot of other videos, okay? But in regards to the magician, okay, the one thing that we know with the magician is that it's a bitch trying to rescue him off that rocket chair. But I don't think the big buff that happened to him was the escape artist sort of trait that allows him to be invisible for 2 seconds. I actually think the bigger one is the movement speed bonus, because the movement speed bonus is really going to dictate how fast this magician goes down or how long that magician can stay alive. All right. And one of the questions I was asked in terms of my prediction as to how magician's going to be utilized is I was offered this. Do you think that magician, it is better off not to use both of his wands, to perhaps only use one wand and try to save one, so when he's rescued, he can double up? So he gets rescued, he's invisible for 2 seconds, and then he uses a magician wand in order to escape. Think about that. It's for 2 seconds, right? You reemerge, and then you try to use your wand to continue that movement speed bonus, right? So is it better to use a magician and his wands in the beginning and try to maximize how long he can kite for? Or is it better to save a magician wand just in case you go down and you try to use it to escape? That's the argument, or question, rather. And I think what the big thing is that the answer is going to depend. My gut instinct, all right? Now remember, this buff just happened. Okay, this buff just happened. So I think really what my gut instinct is telling me is that it most likely will be better for you to use your 2 magician wands in the beginning. I understand the argument. As to why one may think that it is better to try to save at least 1 wand so they can escape. I think it's going to depend on the magician. I think it's going to depend on the part of the map that you're on. If you're in a very awful spot and you know that your magician wands are not going to help too much, then yeah, you can preserve it. But if you're in a good area and that magician wand can really help you, I would rather you use both magician wands, because early game is everything. First of all, the good thing about a magician, other than what perfumer, so the difference between the two, right, is that perfumer feeds the hunter if used incorrectly, whereas a magician doesn't. All right, well, unless he gets terror shocked, right? So the good thing about a magician is that you can really prevent a lot of these hunters from leveling up. So going against a hunter as a magician is very detrimental, all right? Because if you go against a good magician, not only are you getting kited, but you're also not absorbing any hits. You're not leveling up your insolence whatsoever. And furthermore, as a magician, if I was a magician, I would want to try to live as much as I possibly could in early game, because again, I want to prevent you from leveling up, and I want my teammates to take those gens down. And that's what makes a magician very scary. Back in the day, so first of all, this server has never seen a magician player better than Yo Mama. There's no old school player that will disagree with that. And I remember having a conversation with Landland, and Landland said, and now this was back when Coordinator was originally created the way that she was. And I remember Landland saying, I would rather go and try to kill a Coordinator than go against Yo Mama's magician. Going against a really good magician, is devastating to a hunter. The problem is that if you do die as a survivor, you're also very detrimental to your team. So there's a lot of team comps that don't like to use that gamble anymore, right? Back in the day, magician was used in tournaments and used in creative ways to block the hunters off, all right? But not so much anymore. We don't really see magician being utilized as much. Now, having this magician buff, this wand buff, that 10% increase in movement, going up to 40%, means that there's less likely to be a terror shock. So are we going to see him reemerge? And the answer is probably not, to be honest with you. I think we'll see him maybe more in rank mode, but in competition mode, I'd be very surprised to see him. But if we do, a good magician player can be very, very difficult to deal with. Is there a consequence? Yes. There's a huge consequence to that. Just like with the current meta, and it's been like this for like 2 or 3 seasons, you'll see a lot of forward mercenary priestesses, and then you'll see either a seer mechanic or a perfumer. You know, that's more common than what you think it is. And there's a consequence to that build, right? Because if you actually go down early as one of those characters, the whole comp is wrong. The whole comp is, it's going to be very difficult for you to escape alive, because you went down so fast, and the whole point of playing those characters is to kite longer, okay? I think that it's going to be interesting to see if there's a reemergence of magician and how that's going to be utilized. I think that it's going to take a lot of time for magician players to adapt to the strategy and really try to figure out what is better, save 1 wand or use both wands to make sure that you get the early game. Because we all know that in this game, you really just need the kite for that first 60 to 90 seconds, which includes that transitional kiting time. So in my mind, I'd rather you use 2 wands, stay alive for as long as you possibly can, so our early game doesn't go to complete shit. Because if our early game's not complete shit, then we should have a chance. Right? So that's my opinion on that matter. And my opinion, to kind of summarize my opinion on what magician's going to be like, I think it's going to be interesting to see how people play him. you save one wand for a rescue. So when you get rescued, you try to do something fancy. But you got to be really careful doing that sort of strategy. A lot of hunters, when you go in for the rescue, they're just going to swing right at the chair. So the worst thing that you can do is try to have a strategy where you think that you're going to be able to escape the hunter and it fails, when you could use both of your wands in the beginning to prevent the hunter from really getting you down too fast so the rest of your team can finish decoding. And I think that there's going to be some scary potential with Magician. That 10% movement speed increase is a very big deal. It's a bigger deal than I think what some people are giving credit to it for. Imagine if Magician is just one of those characters where if you go against a really, really good character, a good magician, you're not going to get them down because they know exactly how to use their wands in every part of the map. And I think some people are going to try to rise to the occasion, so you got to be careful. You got to be patient with it. You're not going to get it right away. But again, there is a consequence to using the Magician. The other good thing about Magician, well, technically, is you don't really have as many skill checks, and they're easier to hit. So that's a good thing about a Magician, especially if you're somebody that lags a lot. Now, I know what people are going to say. Skill checks are a good thing. Last that I knew, I think it only increases your decoding speed by like a second out of 75 for a typical character. So not the biggest deal in the world. The other good thing about having that sort of thing, a bigger success zone, is you also don't got to worry about being, skill checked upon a a teleport. So I think that this buff is a really big deal. That 10% movement speed increase is a really big deal. I'm going to be interested to see how people utilize those wands. I think that I would still rather use both wands and not try to get some ridiculous, insane rescue attempt that allows me to get away from the hunter, because good hunters are going to, some hunters are better actually at rocket chair defense, and so your strategy is a huge gamble. Or maybe you change up your style depending on the hunter. Right? Maybe hey, this hunter is not that good at, covering this rocket chair, so maybe I'll save it. It's going to be interesting to see how the rules of engagement, right? It's the same thing with, like, Explorer. Think about it. With Explorer, he has different tactics. With certain hunters, he'll try to hide in his minimized state, his fucking lollipop mode. But other hunters, he won't. Like Blood Queen, right? That would be a disaster, depending. So, I think that this buff is huge. I'm more excited about that 10% increase in movement speed, because if you pretty much are making Magician to be almost virtually impossible to Terra Shock, then you're essentially saying that a Magician can really cut you for a long time, and if you do not have Insolence, you will be severely punished. That's a snowball effect for the rest of your team. Right? Now, there's still a consequence, so I would like, then that consequence is that 60% increased time to rescue him. So what are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen after this buff? Did his character tier just increase? Did it become better? Is he going to be a more versatile character? I think the other thing that we should consider is that the reason why we don't see a lot of Magicians is because he's such an old character. I think people confuse that. That's one of the problems with statistics, right? We talk about this with the character tier list when we come out with all these rankings. One of the things that we need to remember is that Magician may not be used as some of the newer flashy characters, because we've already played Magician for over a year. We've already played with him. We've already had fun with him. Now we want to get better with these newer characters like the Gravekeeper and the Prospector. But then again, the problem with that argument is that everyone still uses Perfumer. I don't know. I would like to hear your thoughts about this. Please post them below. And thank you very much for watching as always. And again, thank you very much to all of these supporters and you as well, the people who are supporting me. Special shout out to people like Smitten Miss Kitten. You're absolutely awesome. Other shout outs to @PO and Had and many other players, including Neopsych. You guys are all amazing. There's no way I have enough time to mention everybody who's amazing. This would be a whole video in by itself, but thank you very much for watching, and please tell me your thoughts below. Have a good day, guys. Thank you so much.